What makes a good school? One might ask. Molesworth would certainly have known. I'm staring here at the private life of the gerund, which is a wonderful, wonderful little digression with the brilliant pictures by Ronald Searle. This is a book I was introduced to years ago when I was at school, and I think the person who introduced it to me was a fellow called Nick Hume, who's now a CEO of one of the NHS trusts, and so I'm always grateful because it's a wonderful series of books. In fact, my dust cover has got torn here, which is a bit of a shame. It tells you how old this book is because it says 21 shillings on the front. So there we are. Back in the day. And yeah, what makes a school good? Is it a postcode? Is it selectivity? Is it fees? Or is it something more fundamental, the quality of its teaching, the breadth of its curriculum, the opportunities it provides beyond the classroom or in the classroom? In an ideal world, every school should be excellent, and the very existence of a so-called bad school is a damning indictment of the system, not the school. No parent chooses to send their child to a failing school. They do so because they have no alternative. And yet, our system of inspection and branding, epitomised by Ofsted, presents schooling as a consumer choice, as if one can simply shop around for the best deal in education. The reality, of course, is far messier. And if Ofsted says, oh, this school is inadequate, this school is outstanding, why would anybody want to go to a school which is inadequate? Ofsted's role should not be to label schools as outstanding or inadequate, or even produce this new spectrum, a categorisation that often bears little relation to the day-to-day reality of school life, but rather to ensure that all schools meet a standard of excellence. The idea that a parent can browse an Ofsted report and choose a school as if selecting a holiday package is nonsensical. Catchment areas, house prices, selective admissions all limit genuine choice for many families, and there's simply no option but to accept what is on offer or to go private. This brings me to the great ideological battle about private schools. Sir Keir Starmer, in his drive to level up education, has embraced the idea of imposing VAT on private schools that will generate, he says, £1.7 billion annually for the state sector. Yet, as Sir Peter Lample, arguably the country's leading expert on social mobility, has pointed out, this will not equalise education, it will diminish it. Starmer and Lample attended the same school, Reigate Grammar. It was state-funded when they joined, but became independent 2 years later, with local authorities covering fees for those already enrolled. A little bit like Hampton, where I taught. Starmer, like Lample, and I suppose like a number of other people that I know, received a bursary to stay on for the sixth form, and yet the Prime Minister persists in portraying his education of that of a state school boy. Lample rightly accuses him of fudging the facts. Labour's position on education is riddled with contradictions. The same people who denounce private schooling often benefited from it themselves. Starmer, with his bursary-funded private education, I also received a bursary, but I don't claim to have gone to a state school. Starmer now champions policies that would deny others the very opportunities that he enjoyed. Rachel Reeves, now Chancellor, previously called for the outright abolition of private schools, and yet their rhetoric ignores the reality. Independent schools contribute enormously to education beyond their own pupils, offering bursaries, partnerships, extracurricular opportunities far beyond what most state schools can afford. Starmer himself has spoken about how learning the flute at Reigate Grammar gave him skills for life, a broader, richer education that many state school pupils receive. And yet, his government's policies threaten to undermine precisely those elements of schooling that foster such skills. As Lample points out, independent schools excel not just in academies, in academics, but in drama, in music, in sport, debating and leadership opportunities, resources state schools simply do not have. They used to, and particularly the grammar schools, but the grammar schools were ditched in an ideological drive to bring all schools down to some sort of norm. We don't bring schools, we don't bring education down, we bring education up. We aspire, we inspire. The imposition of VAT on private school fees will not create an equal playing field. It will shrink opportunities, bursaries will be cut, outreach work reduced, and some smaller independent schools will be forced to close. State schools, already grappling with budget cuts, teacher shortages, crumbling buildings, will not suddenly become better resourced by this policy. Instead, they will inherit pupils without the additional funding required to accommodate them, frustrated that they are now not able to follow the same work programs that they were following before at their private schools. Students suddenly forced in the middle of a GCSE term to change from one syllabus to another. Because our exam system and the exam boards, the exam system is extraordinarily volatile. Even if you're teaching in the same school, next year you'll be teaching an entirely different set of books, set of set texts. And it means as a teacher, you never quite know what's coming. Instead of punishing private schools, the government should find ways to expand access to their resources. More partnerships, more bursaries, more open access schemes like those piloted by the Sutton Trust. The goal shouldn't be to bring the independent sector down, but to lift the state sector up so that the independent sector is unnecessary. Ofsted, too, should be reformed, not to brand schools, but to drive universal improvement. I know people who are Ofsted inspectors, and the people that I know are all useless. And they go from job to job simply because of their Ofsted connection, because schools are terrified, and they think by having an Ofsted inspector in their backyard running their school or running some department, that will somehow or other give them kudos or give them an insight into the arcana, the esoterica of the Ofsted inspection. Maybe it does. Ultimately, schooling should not be a postcode lottery, nor should it be subject to ideological point scoring. Every child, regardless of background, deserves an excellent education. The focus should be on ensuring that every school meets that standard, not on dismantling institutions that have long provided it.